Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm glad to be with you again. In the last episode, I talked a little bit about my particular superpowers or the process of identifying your entrepreneurial superpowers. And I think this is really important because it'll help you start to carve out your niche within how you think about going about your business. So for someone that might be running an e-commerce store, there's millions of people running e-commerce stores. So how can you use your particular superpowers to fuel the way that you run your store? So for me, in terms of business, for me, I ran a startup in 2016. I worked at a bunch of other companies, but in 2016, I had an opportunity to leave New York City, launch a software startup. I convinced three crazy people to join with me without salary to leave New York and to try to build this big aspirational thing with me. And so I'm speaking a little bit from that place, coming from I know some of my superpowers. Now, unfortunately for me and for them, that particular project didn't plan out the way that I wanted it to. I'm not Alex Hormozy, I'm not a multi-millionaire. So I'm kind of, again, starting at ground zero, and I'm trying to help you guys with what I've learned through that process. However, the blessing in disguise there was I was able to see some of the things where I was on the right path, some places where I was not on the right path, and everything in between. So as it relates to superpowers, one of the things that I'm really strong at, and I want you guys to be thinking as I'm going through these, asking yourself, what are those things for me? What are the things that, I constantly think this is common sense, but nobody else seems to be doing it, or nobody else seems to be thinking the same way. For me, that is looking at people and looking at opportunities and being able to fast forward to the end or to the result very quickly. So I early on in my life, this was probably a strong defense mechanism for me in terms of avoiding toxic relationships in high school or middle school or in college, where I had a feeling early on that there was going to be a problem, and I just like early on I knew that that wasn't going to be the right situation for me, or I had this gut feeling that, and I'll go into my gift, extrapolating these small situations out into bigger time frames. I was like, it would be unwise for me to assume that this thing that I don't enjoy going through is not going to continue repeating. And so what I will do tactically is let me just give you a really easy one. Recently, I'll just make this hypothetical. Say you're going to coffee shop get coffee with somebody. Maybe it's somebody you're looking at to be a potential co-founder. Do they show up on time? Like, do they make you wait 15, 20 minutes? And if you do have to wait, is there a good excuse as to why they had to wait? Did they have some unforeseen traffic thing or whatever? And if this is your second interaction with this person, or third or fourth, or some subsequent interaction, do they continuously do this? Are they known for standing people up or being late to meetings? And you start to frame this picture. And I want to pause here for a second because I fought this superpower for a long time. I think we all know that we all feel some level of it's not right to judge other people or to put other people into buckets. And I don't like to be judged or put into a bucket and I certainly make mistakes. We all do. There's times when I've been late to things. There's times when things have been out of my control. However, I just want to mention that before moving on. It's like, whatever your gift is, it may be something that's causing you a lot of pain right now. Maybe it's something that's really contentious for you. For me, this was something I really, really fought with. I'm like, no, you can't look at it this way. I would have this self-dialogue with my internally and be like, you can't think of things this way. You can't look at people this way. And I wouldn't devalue them. I would just say I need to figure out how to limit the relationship or limit the engagement or reconsider whatever the engagement is that I'm about to potentially embark on with this person. And so it may take you some time to figure out how to apply these things to your life. But if you're working with, similar feelings or patterns where you feel like you're really battling with it, why do I feel this way about other people? It could be a gift. It could be a huge blessing in disguise for you, or you could just be really judgmental and nasty, and that's something you have to work on. But moving on, say that they come to this meeting, you're going to grab coffee, they're 20 minutes late, and that's like one thing. And then maybe in the course of the conversation, you're getting coffee for an hour, 2 hours, and there's just a couple things that just don't feel right. And this is another thing I want to touch on as it relates to this gift, but also perhaps your own gifts, whatever those are for you, is, so, I like to think of, my background's been in product management and in building software. And a lot of times we always talk about, data doesn't lie and data is so important and data. And the problem with that is it's great to think that we live in such a logical world and everything's so logical. But if you look around yourself, if you look at how you make your own decisions, like really slow it down, it always starts emotionally. Like almost everything in our society, it starts with emotion, then it goes into the logic, or you use the logic to justify the emotion. And so I like to say, data doesn't lie, but data does not tell the whole story. And I think that is a really, really critical, important thing to understand. Is like, you have to be careful when you're analyzing data that's given to you from another party, or even data you come up with, because you probably have your own bias baked into it. And so being aware that data is just a sliver of the story, it's a sliver in time, what's the context around it, it's really important to know that. But then adding on to that, I would say the next piece is gut, right? So as a product manager, you talk about data-driven decisions and gut-driven decisions. And the key with gut that I personally believe, this is something like I've coined for myself, is like, for me, I believe that gut decisions are decisions that are like maybe structured data, maybe even unstructured data, right? There may be numerical percentages of when something has happened that gives you a feeling in your gut that this isn't right. And so when I have a gut decision on someone or an interaction that doesn't feel right, I'll go home and I'll think about, why did I feel that way? What were the things that caused me to feel that way? And I won't always have the answer overnight or instantly, but over time of journaling, I do a gratitude journal, I do some things, I'll think about it. And again, I think about it for the context of, how do I improve as a person? How do I avoid situations which could be painful for me or for other people? How do I add as much value as possible to people that are struggling or suffering? And so I'll reflect on situations where my gut was just telling me something was off or something was wrong. And so I look at gut as actually an accumulation of data. Like, they may be singular data points. They're not necessarily anecdotes. They are, like, for me, they are data points. They are points in time when a thing happened. It's binary, yes or no, and that thing caused me to be uncomfortable. Or that thing, if you extrapolated that situation out with logic, well, if I'm going to, get into a co-founder relationship with this person and they're constantly 20 minutes late, that's one of the components of why I don't feel a good gut reaction to this situation or that decision of moving into an engagement with this person that's, maybe at a deeper level. And so for me, gut reactions or gut visceral reactions or gut emotions, for me, they're opportunities for me to dive in further and understand what is the data behind that gut reaction, that gut emotion. And so I've started to take all of this, right? So I don't judge myself as much for thinking this way. I don't say this is wrong, I'm doing it wrong, I shouldn't, I do look at this as a gift now for myself. And then when something doesn't feel right, I dive into it further. I try to understand why I felt the way that I felt about a given interaction. And so this person, let's say you're meeting with them for coffee, they're a little bit late, maybe they don't have an amazing excuse as to why. During the conversation, they're maybe a little bit disheveled, and you're thinking about why, in my gut, the conversation didn't flow well, it didn't feel right. And then when you reflect on it, maybe it's like they didn't make a lot of eye contact with you, or maybe when you guys were communicating back and forth, it was like a one-way street where it was all about that person, and there was no space for you to contribute anything, or there was a lot of nudging responses. So a lot of times when people are communicating back and forth and someone's like, okay, yeah, it feels like they're pushing you to end the conversation earlier. You're pushing you to get to their point so they can get to their point faster. All of those things can add up to create a situation where you're like, it just felt icky. And so I will look at those interactions, as many that I have with somebody in a short span of time, and I will extrapolate that out and start to create a picture. And then with that, I will start to ask myself, is this a good decision? Is this type of engagement, am I setting them up for failure, or am I setting us both up for failure by getting into something where I think the same things that happened on the small scale are not unlikely to happen when we're working 80 or 90 hours a week together. And so for me, looking at people, but also situations, there's been companies I've worked out in the past, or I've known of in the past, or I've stumbled on, and I'm like, maybe for somebody else, this is a great startup idea, but for me, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem like something I would buy. This doesn't seem like people in my network would buy. This doesn't seem like a successful winning idea. And I'm not saying I'm always going to be right or you're always going to be right. But at some level, if you're going to get started or you're going to have an engagement, you've got to believe in the thing you're selling, right? Like you will never be a successful salesperson. And when I say salesperson, I mean co-founder, founder, whatever. You'll never be successful in that role if you don't believe that the thing you're offering or the thing that you are selling is truly going to impact and benefit the lives of other people that you're potentially selling it to, your prospects, your leads, whoever, right? Like you wouldn't intentionally do harm on other people. And so you can apply the same strategy of looking at a relationship or a situation with a person, and you can also apply it to a business or a concept, where you start to think about, why in my gut does that business or that business idea or that business model just not sit with me well? Why does it not make sense? And if you start to analyze it deeper, you might see red flags based on things you've experienced through your past. Now, I want to pause and caveat that, like, yes, history does have a tendency to repeat itself. However, there are also opportunities for you to break out of something and say, like this morning, I bought a very expensive piece of software for me, where I'm at. I don't have money coming in, and it was really scary to spend thousands of dollars on this thing. And for me, that fear or that reaction to spending this much on the software, it's not a gut reaction that's based on some previous history of things, and there's like red flags that I'm pulling from my gifts or maybe from past experiences. It's more like it's scary because of just the financial logic of not having a ton of cash coming in. I'm going to be spending this money, but it's an investment in myself. And so I needed to get over this hurdle of looking at this investment in myself as a lot of money. And so you might experience those situations too, where it's like there are certain gut reactions or certain things that might cause you fear that you just need to push beyond because you're going to level up and going through that. Like this piece of software for me, I don't lose. Either way, I don't lose. That money, the thousands of dollars, it's out of my account, but I don't lose. Either I will use it, and the identity that I was sold on when I was going through the process of purchasing and considering it, of being an entrepreneur, having, being able to generate more leads and having a more effective business, that identity, I'll either obtain that by going through the steps of the program, learning and teaching myself, or I won't, and I'll have learned that maybe this particular entrepreneur, the people that were recommending it, or there will be some other lesson wrapped up in the failure of procuring this thing if it doesn't work out. And so just be mindful of what are the things where it's like, that you should do this thing just because it's causing you to go to the next level in your journey. It's helping you level up and go to the next level, versus there's really not a lot of upside. This person, this project, I'm just like not getting a good gut feeling when I've done things like this in the past. When I extrapolate and look at the situation as a whole, there's been a line of things that, instances, situations that haven't made a lot of sense, or they've been disrespectful of my time. I should avoid this. So you've got to find a balance of, when to do which one over the other. I hope that this helps you. I hope that this blesses you. I hope you're able to find and develop your own gifts further. So yeah, thanks for spending the time with me.